This is Chapter 8 of Innovation and Inquiry in the Classroom. Chapter 8 is called Preparing Your Institution, School, and Class. And I gotta say, I was a lot of feelings about this chapter. Some of the ideas, it was kind of on the extremes for me. Either the ideas that they had I really, really liked, or the ideas presented in this chapter I'm like, I was taking the side of like, no way, that's crazy. Like that could never work in the classroom. Oops. So, and also I feel like it wasn't as helpful as I wanted it to be. Like the chapter, like preparing your institution, school, and class, like broken down into three parts. This chapter delves into the preparation, organizing, and implementation stage of running variations of the 20% time. It, it did not seem practical. It seemed like the chapter was talking about like success stories, but I didn't feel like it was that helpful in starting up this kind of project in my own room. But here are my thoughts. So Giuliani talks about three different schools and how they've each implemented something very creative that have helped their students. So the first is the New Milford High School, and the principal, Eric Scheninger, he told the students, he had the students, their seniors, do like a senior capstone project, which I really like that idea. When I was a senior in high school, we had a senior research paper, which was like we got to research whatever we wanted, so that was kind of cool. But the choice was you had to write a paper. I know that my husband graduated from Webster Schrader, and he had to do a senior project, and I think his was like learning how to run the light board for the school play or something. But then I had another friend who was in his school's music department, and I believe he like learned how to conduct and conducted a piece for rehearsed a piece for orchestra and conducted it at the concert. So I think that's a great idea. I definitely think it would help get students, especially seniors, engaged, especially as the end of the year is coming. And it said, like, senioritis was in full swing. And I'm like, yeah, right. This is like the sixth graders, too. So I think I'm on the right track with giving a 20% project to sixth graders. So yes, the senior checkpoint. And then he talked about, in addition, they began an independent study for students called the Independent Open Courseware Study, which I think I need more information on that because, so it says it enables high school students to access this powerful learning resource and earn high school credit for their work. So do they test out of subjects like English or social studies or math? Like, do they take this in lieu of those subjects, or do they take it in addition to it? And I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it was like when I was in college, like being a music major, I took everybody else took 5 classes and I took 15 because that was the life of a music major, like per semester. And I didn't want any extra work. But maybe if there's a senior who's like really interested in something, they'd be interested in doing additional work. Now I want additional work because I'm not taking 15 classes in a semester. But I just wonder. I want to see that in action. I want to see how that works, and is that open to like all the high schoolers, or just I don't remember if it said if it was for all the high schoolers or if it was just for the seniors. Great idea. I would need to see it in action because it's hard for me to visualize what that might look like. The next one was the Sunbury Valley School, and I read it, and I was just uncomfortable with the entire idea because because of the sentence, adult teachers work alongside students to help them throughout this process but never take it over. This leads to a high level of independent thinking. which I am all for independent thinking. However, I'm uncomfortable with this because it seems like it would eliminate my job unless kids were doing like a music project and they needed a music mentor, which I would be happy to be. Like, I didn't become a teacher like this this sounds completely this sounds completely like counter to everything that this book is about. But I didn't become a teacher to sit on my butt. Like, I became a teacher to inspire kids and to really get them into the love of music and to get them excited about maybe something they've never been excited about before. So this is completely contrary to what my beliefs are. And I wrote down, I don't want to be a private lesson teacher. I don't enjoy teaching private lessons. I mean, unless like the student is like really, really into it. I mean, it's not something that I enjoy. Like, I don't want to put in that I don't want to put in that extra time, you know? Like, I want to do what I was hired to do. So, I mean, I, I think if this were like, okay, if this were for music specifically, I think I'd be more into it. But it I feel like I wouldn't have the job that I wanted. I feel like I would have to be like, I feel like a career change might be in order if like all schools were like this. I I'm uncomfortable with this idea. Like, I love that like students get to pursue what they want to pursue. That's great, but that's also what college is for. And also, I wrote down, what if the students choose to go to a liberal arts college where you have to have you have to have a solid background in like basic math and English and science and social studies. Like, if you take those electives and you have no idea what you're doing, you're gonna fail. Um, so I'm having a hard time embracing this concept, as you can tell. Um, the last school Giuliani talks about, is the Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia, which says SLA is an inquiry-based school that is partnered with the Franklin Institute. The students and staff work toward three questions, which are: how do we learn, what do we create, and what does it mean to lead? Um, the What I really like about this one is it gives the students internships in fields that they're interested in to learn those skills and to like create projects based around what they think they want to do. And I like it because it exposes you to a lot of different. If you're doing it for 2 years, sophomore and junior, you can do more than one internship. If you go into something and decide like, hey, maybe that's not for me, then you can choose to do something else. And it kind of helps better sort out your life. And that's why I like BOCES programs too, which I've already explained in another video. Like going to the auto shop and learning from mechanics, or going to the beauty salon and learning from the hairdressers. That's really smart especially if you don't plan on going to college, if you plan to go right on to work. So I like that. The only thing that I didn't like about the SLA in general is that there's a focus on science, technology, math, and entrepreneurship. I said, boo, where are the arts? Because as research shows, music and art, like if you participate in the arts, then you are smarter than you would be if you didn't participate in the arts. And also colleges like that stuff too. They like you to be well-rounded and to do something. And also, how many people say like, oh, I wish I kept up with that instrument, oh, I wish I kept up with singing, and then like refuse to try it again as an adult. That's frustrating. That's a tangent. But I could get behind. I certainly could get behind this kind of learning. And I would be super happy to help kids out. Like if I was at a high school level, you know, like getting kids to like Auburn, or not Auburn, sorry. I think FLCC might have a music business program, but just getting kids like hooked up with what they think they might want to do. I'd be super happy to help with that, but this sounds like it's more practical at the high school level. So under the next heading is different methods, different schools, different methods, same understanding. For the preparation, so the preparation talks about like, okay, how are we going to get this in at our schools? So basically what comes down to it is, are your stakeholders informed? Do you have leaders in the school who are willing to implement this? And you have to do some research and have reasons to support why this is a good idea, because especially in that Sudbury Academy, I could see a lot of teachers and staff and parents not particularly agreeing with that method. The other thing is, and this just comes from me taking a research class in music therapy, using research and next practices. You have dissenters and those who want a traditional state of schooling to help to keep the status quo. They will need research and examples to support change. And I just got picky with what research meant, because there's like scientific studies that are considered research-based, evidence-based, and there's research that's like anecdotal and that traditionally isn't held as in high regard as something like a double-blind study, like randomized controlled trial, which you can't do because of ethical reasons. So I know that I'm purposely putting a roadblock in my way to make this less feasible, because I don't really I'm not in love with the ideas. Then he goes on to talk about implementation of this in the schools, and some of the ideas, I like them out of context. Like if people trust you as a leader, you won't question the call because you won't question their judgment, because you know that they have the best interests of the students or players, because he's using a coaching example at heart. So I agree. I agree that if you want to make a change in your school, like that's something that you have to have. And if you want to put in some of the inquiry-based learning, like, okay, I can understand that, but like I can't having a hard time. And the second is, what's the point? Please let them know. And I try to do this in my classroom anyways, because the kids are like, why on earth are we waving scarves around to music? Like, what is the point of this? And so I tell them and I let them know, we're working on expressive movement, and that's good in the music room, but that's also good when you're on the sports field, like coordination. I also do like the share examples of student work from other schools when you want to emphasize the point of this, because that exists, and I think people can be greatly swayed by a story, by a piece of knowledge or an example of something great that happened from this type of learning. So I do agree with that. And then again, they're sharing and reflecting on the way. There's nothing more powerful than shared reflection. Classroom and school should have time devoted to reflection and sharing. And that part frustrated me, because that was a part where he said, you should do this, and didn't give you any practical, he didn't give you a practical way to do it. So like, I'm sure that teachers want to share their ideas more often, but it isn't always feasible to do that during the school day. And it's tricky to, it can be tricky to find time outside of the school day too. But yes. And then there is the shaded section about what that teachers can lead to or lead change to. And he does give practical examples there of like, all right, so say a teacher wants to do this, say two teachers want to do this, and one teacher says, oh, this is impossible, and the other teacher says, no, okay, we can make this happen. I certainly think it's more of a mindset issue that like teachers can make this happen if they had the motivation and if they had the inspiration. Um, I don't like the black and white uh, categorization of like teacher A versus teacher B. I don't want to turn my music room into an inquiry only based room yet because that is just too much work. I teach 3 whole grade levels, plus next year is going to be 2 special ed classes who are going to have their own lesson plans. So I'm writing 5 lesson plans. Like that's too much at once to it's realistically it's too much at once to handle. But do I want to add components of this into my curriculum? Absolutely yes, and that's absolutely what I'm going to do. I just do not want to do it all at once. It's overwhelming to think of. I do agree with there's a point where it talks about, okay, teacher B realize they must begin to implement this type of learning in their classroom for students to succeed now and in the future. A growing body of research has shown the following, and the third point is students are most successful when they are taught how to learn as well as what to learn, and I agree with that, and I'm interested in that, and I think I even said this in, excuse me, my chapter 1 and chapter 2 reflections, like students need to be taught those critical thinking skills in order to be successful. And the last piece that I want to touch on this is that so next to the institution checklist, I have just like a general reflection of the chapter, which was, I don't know that this chapter was mega helpful. I'm a half-time specials teacher. I don't think it's my job to start a revolution. And that sounds kind of harsh now that I read it now. But I do want to be the teacher that inspires, but I don't think I have to do a 180 of my classroom in order to do that. And again, maybe it's yet. So yeah, that was a hard chapter for me to get behind overall. It's just it's too much to try and change my mind completely through 15 pages of reading. It's going to take more than that to completely change my mind on having a radical classroom like some of those classrooms. But anyways, that's my reflection on chapter 8. Didn't love it. I'm going to go on to chapter 9, and hopefully that will be a little more, I don't know, I think maybe I'll get more out of it. I don't know. We'll see.